It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! All right. It is Feedback Friday. And if it looks like things are super humid and gross, it's because it is. It's not hot here, but it's super humid. So I'm like, right now. But I want to make a Feedback Friday because, oh my God, so much love for Lady Bits episode 8. I did not expect this. I fully admit that I thought that the historical shows were going to be the weakest in the series, which is why I buried them in episodes 8, 9 and 7, 8, 9 of the series. That's when you're allowed to kind of go slower in a series. But wow, people are loving them. That's amazing. It makes me happy. Sorry, I'm watching Link whack at Delilah through the door. Cats are awesome. But your feedback, there are people are like, no mention of this, no mention of that. No. This show was so jam-packed that I had to be merciless with the editing. Like, it hurt me. There was so much stuff that got cut. Like, it wasn't even funny. And it really does show how women were very much involved in gaming, even as a minority in the 1990s. And the 2000s are gonna be worse. I am going to try to do a some artists, some programmers, some designers, some writers. It's going to be sort of trying to go broad because there are too many creators to fit in. For people who complain, yes, Amy Hennig will be in the 2000s show because Uncharted was sort of her most popular game, and with people like Ria Kokodama, I set the decade based on their most well-known output. And so even though Legacy of Kain is great, it's not the most well-known of the stuff Amy Hennig has worked on. So that's a bit of a spoiler, but I want people who are like, oh, no, Amy Hennig. No, Amy Hennig. She is in the 2000s episode for sure, for sure, for sure. With very distinguished company. This is going to be a tough one. And I think it's funny that people like the goth look and purple hair. Noted. We'll do more goth in future. That's kind of funny because in high school, I swung between a goth look and more of like an in living color fly girl thing. It was like goth fly girl in the 90s. I grew up in a very unique microcosm, but yeah, it's kind of funny that people really liked it that much. But I've had a lot of people say that, the nostalgia and everything like that, it was a really fun time. And that's awesome. It definitely motivates me to do more historical stuff in future. The patrons got a breakdown of what I have planned in future. This is probably a good time. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Link is in the description box below. Yeah, they got a sneak preview of what's coming up next. But so become a patron if you want to be a part of that. But it was interesting the number of guys who said they prefer to play as women. And I think it's so cool that we have that dialogue because, yeah, I know plenty of guys that prefer to play as women. There are certain games I prefer to play as guys. I am all over the place in terms of my playable character. My playable character kind of fits the game. There are certain games where I want to be a dude in. Fallout, I tend to lean more guy just because of that, war never changes. It tends to be a male voice, and so I get strung that way. But Saints Row, I always make my character look like Nicki Minaj because if anybody can kick ass in, the world of the Saints, it's going to be Nicki Minaj. And Dragon Age, I tend to make like this cute blonde little elf girl. Mass Effect was just all about Jennifer Hale. They're, I joked in a video a while back. There are 3 genders for me in video games: male, female, and Jennifer Hale. It even rhymes. That's why it's so cool. But yeah, you gotta go with Jennifer Hale. Not that I don't love Mark Meer. I really like him as, the Baldur's Gate Enhanced Edition character. But it's all about Jennifer Hale and Mass Effect. But Dragon Age, I flip back and forth. My favorite Dragon Age characters, I played Dragon Age Origins like a ridiculous amount. If you look at my Steam account, I have 500 hours in Dragon Age Origins. Nerd. But my favorite character that I created for that game, I played through it 4 times. But my favorite character was this kind of Wolverine-like mutton chop guy who was something of a dunce and was like bros with Logain and, you know, kind of had a tragic thing for Morgan. That was my favorite experience playing Dragon Age. I have no idea why. But in Inquisition, I preferred to play as female because it was, you know, all about Cullen, but then you can only play as certain races. So I am all over the map when it comes to playing as male characters. You guys know Kratos is my spirit animal. And this probably should not surprise anyone who follows my content that I am not gender typical. And that's what's wonderful about games is you can have that experience. I always enjoy kind of being able to be loud and aggressive and kind of cerebral and all those things that women aren't supposed to be and be rewarded for it in a game instead of, you know, the stuff I get in real life. But enough about that. One commenter said that they found that me mentioning the reality of a typical woman preferring things like cooking and fashion was a bold move. Thank you for mentioning that. I was not sure about that comment because that was an actual quote from Rieko Kodama. I have so much respect for this woman. Oh my god, the Phantasy Star series were so great. It was so cool on this episode that I was allowed to Sega fangirl like crazy because I was one. Gangster Town, Altered Beast, Safari Hunt for the win. I love those games. I was more of a Sega girl than a Nintendo girl. I know. It's why I don't say Mario properly. I slipped. I said Mario once, Canadian style, but then I recovered and said Mario in the show. In editing, I was so embarrassed. But one person said, that was a bold move to say the reality of typical women preferring cooking and fashion. That was actually a quote from Rieko Kodama, and it made me stop and think because that's not me, but I'm not typical. And that's the whole point, that there are games like Mortal Kombat for women who aren't typical. You know, I'm so grateful to Jane Jensen for how open she was with her comments. Like, wow, I did not expect her to be so bold, but she just sort of nailed it, that she's not typical and she responds more like a guy. And that was cool. And so I'm like, all right, you know, I'm going to quote this luminary in game design, and she has a point. Games should be for typical women as well as atypical women, the same way they should be for typical men as well as atypical men. In an interactive environment, there should be space for anyone. That's what makes a good game. And in games like, you know, God of War, Uncharted, there's a very defined playable character. So that means that you are playing as that character. So the character's personality teaches you how to play the game. And that's what I love about the Doom revamp, the most recent Doom game, is Doom Marine. It's all about playing aggressively, right? So the fact that he like pounds consoles instead of, you know, pushing the button, and the fact that he uses like severed arms and eyes and all that stuff to open doors, it tells you how to play aggressively. That's the way the game wants you to play. Just get in there, get close, punch people in the face with like your big Doom gauntlet of murder, and that's the game. And I love it for it. It is a very deliberate vision. And I contrast that with games like King's Quest that, you know, it's always sort of a noodly arm protagonist, and so you have to solve puzzles indirectly and with sort of whimsy and thinking instead of bashing your way through it. The protagonists teach you how to play the game. But then there are games like Fallout and Dragon Age and Mass Effect Pre-Andromeda where the thing I didn't like about Mass Effect, I liked a lot of things about Mass Effect, but the thing I didn't like about Mass Effect is it felt more like an action game than an RPG. And that was just my expectations from BioWare. I they have the complete right to make a more action-oriented RPG, but I was expecting more like the experiences of Baldur's Gate and, some of those BioWare Black Isle interplay titles. I love them now. But yeah, I was expecting more of that, and to get that sort of action-focused Paragon Renegade binary, I felt very limited. And I found the games fun. I love the aliens. I love the world they created, but the actual game was not my favorite thing. And one of my big disappointments about BioWare is that they pulled more and more towards the dialogue wheel instead of the way Dragon Age Origins did it, where you had a series of options and you just sort of picked one. It didn't tell you what the actions meant. You didn't get color coded. Oh, if you want this result, pick this one. No, you actually had to role play. I'm in the minority, and I think there was another way around that design challenge, but I digress. It's actually interesting that people thought my Alone in the Dark comment was a dismissal, saying it was cartoony. It was not a dismissal. It was a way of contextualizing the impact of Resident Evil in the time period. And people who called me out on saying Alone in the Dark was like a reimagining, a remake of Sweet Home, that wasn't me. It's on the record that it was intended to be a remake of Sweet Home. They went back and looked at that and redid it for the PlayStation. So you can argue with me all you want. That's just history. One person mentioned the touch by an angel. It's funny because some person took issue with the way I say Sega. They say it's Sega instead of Sega. I'm Canadian. We say A. Can't change. And one person, like the Spice Girls, it was all just like people were just sharing, and that's really good. That was one person said that as a kid they were mesmerized by like the gore and how it was dangerous and everything. It wasn't for teens, and it's funny because when I worked in a youth channel, when I worked in a youth music channel, the mantra was, it's what 12-year-olds think 15-year-olds think 18-year-olds want to watch. And that was where we aimed for with the channel, because it was aspirational. And I think Mortal Kombat shared the same niche in the 1990s. It was an aspirational game. It was a wonderfully made game. It really is. And like Mortal Kombat 1, 2, 3, it started to get a bit weird after that because it became this big phenomenon and there were movies and like tie-ins. And that was sort of the first game that the scope of sort of the spin-off properties got beyond me. But, I mean, I was very late to the game, unlike the Quan Chi era, but man, I loved those games when I was a teenager. Oh, I just, it's beyond that. Other people said that first zombie in Resident Evil scared them too. So good it wasn't me. Oh my God, I was not kidding. That's still, like, I remember exactly where I was when I played that original Resident Evil game. I remember exactly. It was like my boyfriend's place in this particular area of Toronto. I remember exactly where I was. I remember what the room looked like. Because my boyfriend and I at the time, we like rented the game on like a rented PlayStation, and we like blew through it. Like we took shifts going through it because we wanted to see what happened, and like we only had the system. You rented the system and then you rented the game for the weekend. Yeah, you rented games back then and game systems. But it was the weekend, so we had to get it done in like the weekend, and so we took waves. And oh my God, trying to sleep and the hunters coming at me in my sleep, but it was that zombie turn originally. Terrifying. But I remember that. I remember the first time I saw a Mortal Kombat coin-op game. Those memories are so vivid. And apparently I gave some people a similarly vivid memory because a lot of people commented basically, hello, my eyes are up here. Guys with me, gals with me. If I wear an outfit like that with me, it is completely okay to look. There is no way to not look. It's like the Sarlacc pit for eyeballs. It just sucks everything in. I get it. I am not offended. They are very provocative outfits, and that was sort of the point. It was my tribute to Sindel, who is my favorite Mortal Kombat character ever, and I know that's not a usual choice, but I just freaking love her. But yeah, you don't have to feel awkward about it. Friends of mine actually said, I had no idea, in terms of you're like well endowed, and I didn't realize that. And I thought that was pretty funny because I realize that every day of my life. But yeah, that's sort of the wrap up. There isn't terribly much to deal with because everything was just freaking glowing, like Glowy Box. The one person who said they joked they were going to write Glowy Box fan fiction. That's very funny. But yeah, that's sort of the wrap up. I had a question and now I forgot it. Shoot. Oh, yeah, I remember what it was now. Any advice for wardrobe for the 2000s episode, the aughts episode? 2000 fashion is sort of kind of like fashion today, only not quite. So if you have any ideas, let me know. If anybody has any preferences, because goth really worked out well. So if there's some sort of 2000 subculture, let me know, and I'll do my best to try to make that happen. It's got to be something I already own, but yeah, let me know what you think, because I have got to figure that out. I'm at a bit of a loss right now. I was just sort of going to go through my closet and go, what's about 15 years old? Because fortunately, all that stuff still fits. Go me, maintaining the machine. But yeah, let me know if you have a preference. So thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting. Great stuff.